Hey guys, Brad from Blue Nile Farm. If you have a wet lime spreader and you want to learn how to clean it out quick and effectively, stay tuned. We're going to kind of go through the process, how we do some physical scraping by hand, utilizing a pressure washer, and also using chemical application to get this thing cleaned out the best you can so you can store it properly for winter. So stay tuned. So today I'm going to go over how to clean my Stoltzfus Redhawke 8-ton lime spreader, also fertilizer spreader. Now, wet lime, if you guys all know, it's really sticky. It's wet. Sometimes you get big chunks that kind of come through here. And what happens is once wet lime gets run through your system, it starts to stick to everything. And once it gets wet or it creates moisture, a lot of times it'll almost bond like concrete. So best practices is to actually clean this lime spreader out the best you can, wash it out, flush it out, maybe oil it, and then basically, put it away. So the downfall here is that I have not cleaned this out in over a month. And there's a couple reasons why. One, we had pressure washer issues. My smaller pressure washer broke. I upgraded to a bigger pressure washer, which should make a huge difference in the cleaning of this, and I'll kind of go over that in a little bit. Secondly, lime, just by water alone, doesn't always get removed. So I also kind of had to explore chemical ways to remove lime, and I'm kind of cover that as well. And third, I wound up getting injured, and that really kind of screwed me up for about a month, and we had tractor breakdowns, which led us to the fact that we could not get this taken care of in a timely manner. So what we have here is a lime spreader that's been stored inside, that's been relatively dry, but it has run wet lime through it, and it is stuck to everything. It's stuck to the chain, it's stuck to the poly floor, it's stuck to the sides, but this is actually a spreader that's actually empty. And I actually noticed too when we were running the spreader that at the doorway, this piece here got bent probably from a big piece of lime that got stuck and basically kind of popped out through the bottom when it was coming through, and it just didn't break apart. So we also have a little bit of damage here as well. But I can't address any of this till we clean it. So I'm going to kind of take you through the process right now of what we do to clean this thing out. And we're going to start with the spinners, where we're going to actually back up to an area and we're going to try to scrape some of the big chunks off the spinners. And what I feel like we have right now is mostly crust, hard crust on the outside and soft on the inside, but it's still hard to the metal itself. So best practices is once we get the bulk off, we're going to try to apply water, soften up the lime, and then eventually hopefully it breaks off in pieces and cleans up. Toward the end, though, we're going to have issues where some lime is going to be sticking to the metal. And as we attack that problem, we're going to have to use the chemical application to hopefully dissolve that last remaining bit to get the lime off. And we're going to try to do as much as we can, the best as we can, to be done. Then once we have this completely clean and we got all the lime off, what we're going to wind up doing is oiling this up and basically preparing to store it for winter so we don't have rust take over any of our hopper or anything around our chains. We want to make sure everything is done properly and put away for the year. And I might grease it as well just to make sure we have fresh grease inside because of all the moisture going into bearings and stuff. So let me kind of walk you around and kind of show you the condition of this so you know what we're getting into, and then we'll attack it from there. So here's the lime spreader itself, and you can see the reflector guard that's by the tires, that's loaded with lime. Spinners are loaded with lime, and the areas that the cups area that basically throw the lime are basically plugged up. So we're going to try to do that by hand and take care of some of that bulky stuff just to knock it off so we don't have to screw around with a lot of water waste. If you look inside the base here, you can see where that door got bent, and underneath all this is clear. But along the chain, in the area along the chain is basically caked with lime. So we're going to try to flush that out with water. This down here is a poly floor. It's all plastic, as you can see. And hopefully the water just kind of rushes out of that without a problem. Now, basically all the guards are off this, so it's going to be easier to clean around all the bearings and stuff like that. And then we have the exterior. We're going to try to do the interior first, and the reason why is because when you get into the exterior of the spreader, this lime just splatters everywhere, and it's going to splatter on the outside as well. So we're going to try to do the inside first, and then we'll do the outside. And I'm probably going to unhook the tractor from it because, as usual, lime will splatter all over that. But I'm just kind of showing you that we have lime underneath the frame we have to wash off, under the chain, and the chain goes underneath the entire unit. So this is not a PTO driven lime spreader. It is a ground driven, and it's driven by a tire that falls between the two rear tires. And what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm going to drop the tire, which is this small tire here, down a little bit. It's a little high right now, and I'll just kind of move that by hand so I can physically move the chain as we start washing. And what my goal is, and as you may be able to see here in a second, is that this spreader is kind of pointing downward. It's heavy on the front end and is light on the back. We need to basically lift the front end up so the water can flush all the contaminants out the back chute. So we're going to kind of raise the front end up a bit, and so that'll make life a little bit easier. So that's the condition that we're dealing with, and we're going to start knocking that out here in a few minutes. So here's our hopper full of lime, and you can see how it's crusted on the sides wall and in the corners and along the chain and the polyfloor. So we're going to kind of flush this out the best we can and get rid of all that lime, because if we don't, it will definitely rot out our hopper. And plus it'll also sit like concrete. So once we get water to this, we definitely want to get it all out. So now we kind of went over what the condition of this spreader looks like. We're going to do is show you some of the tools and processes we're going to do to clean this off. And the first thing we're going to wind up doing is try to get all this dried chunks off, both the spreader area and the spinners where the cups kind of are, and also this area here where we have a lot of caked on lime. And I'm probably use a tool like this, something I can kind of dig into it, because a lot of it's crusty on the outside, and then once we get through that crust, the inside will actually break apart, and I just want to get rid of as many chunks as I can before we get into hosing it down. And that'll just make it a little easier for me. And the second thing I'm going to do after that is we're going to probably run the chain, so just to break up any of the crust along the chain itself and along the base. And we'll get that knocked out as well. So those will be the two things that we do before we get started to hosing this down. So I ran the lime spreader forward with the wheel engaged to move the chain. Then we backed up and we unhooked the tractor from the spreader, and we jacked up the front end. So now everything slopes downward. So when we start hosing out the hopper, all the water and all the lime are going to be washed out the back end, and that's what we're looking to do. So we're in the right position. So let's go to the back and let's show you how we're going to clean the spinners off real quick. Now, if you're like me and you do this every day, say for a couple days, you're running the spreader or you're filling with lime, a lot of times you'll notice that these areas where it throws actually fill up a lot and they get stuck with lime. Having a scraper with you is probably a good thing even out in the field. But before we put water to this, and I may not even need to do this, I want to get rid of all this lime that's embedded in here. So this tool here, I can poke in and I can get that crust off. And all I'm trying to do is get rid of as much of the chunks as I can, so it makes it a little easier for me down the road. And the other thing too is you don't want to really do any damage to these cups. So the gentler you are with the scraper, the better off you'll be, and get rid of as many of these chunks as possible. And you'll notice that a lot of this is just crust. And once you get past the crust, it's soft, and then just all comes loose. So try to get as much of this big stuff as you can off. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get it with the pressure washer, but it's just a little bit easier that you can control this, because what you'll find is when the pressure washer starts to hit this, on this machine, it'll spin the spinners. So it's a little easier to control this and get rid of as much of this chunk off as possible. Because when it starts to get wet, it's going to get really pasty, and it's just a lot easier to get it off now than later. So scrape off what you can, just make it a little bit easier for you. Now, like I said, you don't necessarily have to do it, but there's a big chunk that was stuck in there that I'm glad to get out of. Another area that's really good to do is keep working on this end. Go across and get as much as you can off here. The more you scrape off, the better off you'll be. Then you can pretty much flush out everything down the rail. It's just to speed things up a little bit. There's no reason to fight a couple inches worth of stuff if you don't have to. And if you can get it off easy with the scraper, this will be a quicker way of doing it. So that's my suggestion. Use a scraper when you can. And for the most part, once we get on the inside, it's almost all going to be with the pressure washer. So here's all these chunks that we took off that fell off out of the spinners. And like I said, the water will do a lot of the damage, but we cleaned off a lot already. So it's going to be a lot easier to clean. And that's really the goal here. So we're going to start getting the pressure washer going. And let me explain my thoughts on pressure washers when it comes down to this type of machine. And as far as the ease of cleaning. So the pressure washer we're going to use today is my Pressure Pro. It's called the Eagle 2. It's a 4-horse, belt-driven, 4-gallon per minute pressure washer. And the reason why I'm looking at 4 gallons per minute is going to produce enough water to flush that lime out of the machine. And the gallons per minute are the big push to this. And it's operated by a 13 horsepower Honda motor. So this is a little pricey. This is almost a $2,000 unit, and with all the attachments I bought, it's well over $2,000. But because of being the farm and having all these things that I'm going to be dealing with, I wanted to make sure I have the proper tools to keep all my equipment clean, and it's time to step up from what I had before. The one that I used before that we tried to use to clean this lime off was a Ryobi 3100 psi, 2.5 gallons per minute. So this is going to produce a lot more gallons per minute, which is more important than the psi. And the nozzles we're going to be using are basically the 15 degree on the sidewalls and along the frame, and the 25 degree when we're getting closer to the polyfloor, because we don't want to damage our polyfloor. So this is our unit. This is what we're going to do, and this thing should move pretty quickly. And it does a pretty good job so far. And then we're going to spray as much of this off as we can, and I'll kind of show you how that goes. So one of the worst things you're doing is trying to clean the chain here that goes underneath the sprocket, because this is not PTO driven and it's ground driven. Somebody has to turn the wheel on the chain to get it to feed through. And then I'm taking a stubby and with the 15 degree nozzle, and I'm going to hit this on all sides right here in the front, because they don't want to come down and hit this polycarbonate floor. So I'm just trying to be safe about it and keeping it clean. And as he keeps running and turning it, we're going to do the entire chain throughout the whole process. And he's telling me as he's turning it, it's getting lighter to feel because all this lime is falling off. So that's where we're at. I'm going to show you how it's done. So, and it's very time consuming. I mean, we spent already about 3 hours cleaning this, and we're still moving. So this is not a quick, easy process that you may think when we talk about wet lime. It's very, very slow. So yesterday we got a lot done. We wound up power washing. We got rid of almost all the crust that we had on the lime spreader. We got it in the off the chains, and I'm going to kind of show you what we did on the chains and where we're at, and also the hopper, and we also did the spinners. So we're kind of locked up. Today it's like 40 degrees. It's really cold. It's starting to have snow, and the chemicals that I want to use work better when it's a little bit warmer. So the other problem too, when you apply chemicals, it's it should be less wind, and it's really pretty windy today. And what's going to happen is as I apply, it's going to spray all over the place, and I'm going to lose some of my chemicals. So we're going to wait later in the week. And the reason why at this point is that we got so much done that the worst part's over, because the bulk of the lime and the crustiness is gone. Right now it's more of a cosmetic thing and trying to knock out some of the few little spots that we missed, but we can knock them out later this week because the worst is over. So let me kind of show you what we got accomplished. The whole chain pretty much shot, and a lot of the chain is not locked up with lime, and you can see all the way underneath we did the bottom and the top of the chain, so it's looking pretty good, going all the way around into the hopper. As we progress around the hopper, you're going to still see residue on the spinners, but not any major chunks. And we get toward the back end, you'll see a few chunks and the polyfloor, but a lot of that is cleared. I mean, underneath our chain, everything's clear and it's not too bad, but we do have some layers on the side we still have to get rid of. And again, the spinners have that white residue. And this is where the chemical comes in, because the chemical itself will break that white residue down, dissolve it, and then we can power wash that. And then we have some dusting that's up on top that we're going to also spray off and remove that as well. So let's go look inside the hopper. So here's our hopper. You can still see some wet lime on the polyfloor, and again, some of the white residue is on the sides of the hopper. And again, once the chemical starts to get applied, this is where it's going to melt off that white residue and crust. Now most people would call this good, and I'm kind of going to do a little bit better. So that's why we're going to take it to the next step. So next, when we get out here in a couple days, I'm going to show you how we remove it chemically, and that will really make a big difference. But again, you need to do this spraying. You want to do it in optimal temperatures. And unfortunately, I'm in mid-November right now, and we're going to get some cold weather coming really quick. So I'm hoping that I can get this done this week. But the worst is over, and that's all I really care about. But it still needs a little bit more flushing, and I'll feel a lot better. So the chemical component that we're going to utilize to really knock out the lime is a product called CLR Vehicle Lime Remover. And this product itself will actually react to the lime and start to dissolve it and break it down. And this is how we're going to break down all that white residue that's all over our hopper, spinners, and even our chain. And then after it dwells for about 3 to 5 minutes at most, we'll spray it off with the power washer, and then we may have to apply it again, but we're going to try to get as much of those little white dots and spots off our spreader and really clean it up the best we can. And this is really the only way to do it. I think this stuff works really good. There's other products on the market, but this is not really hazardous per se, so be careful. But you have certain limitations. You don't want to spray it when it's really too cold out, like today it's 40 degrees. Also, you don't want to spray it when it's too windy, and you'll find that out real easy, because once you start to spray it, out of a sprayer like this is what they suggest, that it will blow back on you, and you want to just make sure you get as much contact as possible. So try to get a day that it's basically very still. Secondly, this sprayer itself, I got this at Harbor Freight. It was $15.99. On sale, it's $9.99. This is a good throwaway sprayer, and this is a good little sprayer that'll work for something like this, and you just kind of coat it off with this wand. Very simple. Other than that, this is the best way to attack the problem. You may have to do it multiple times, but it's still worth it because it really does help remove the lime. Because right now I can get very frustrated by putting and trying to get as much pressure off, as far as nozzles go, trying to get that lime to break, but the chemical will really make a big difference once you start applying. You'll be pretty surprised. So this takes it to the next level versus just power washing. And unfortunately with lime, you almost have to do this to really get the best benefit out of your cleaning process. All right, guys, so we have our CLR. It's in the spray bottle. We're going to go up top. I'm going to show you real quickly what we're dealing with, and so you can kind of see it before and after. And then we're going to spray this thing down. It's dry. It's probably going to go on as the most potent it's going to be, because once they spray it once, it's going to be diluted probably 50% because the walls are moist. But the drier the better, because it's actually going to work. And you don't only want it on for a couple of minutes, maybe longer, just as long as it doesn't dry on the machine. And then we're going to spray this thing right off, and we're going to do it multiple times, because the goal is to get rid of as much lime as possible. And any caked lime, I might have to get in there and scrub it, so we'll see where it goes. But we're going to start with the actual hopper first, and then we're going to flush everything out the back end. Don't worry about the chains, and then we're going to just keep going all the way out to the spinners as being last. And we're going to do the best we can. So stay tuned. I'll kind of show you how this works. One thing I want to add too, as far as spraying goes, as far as being protective, wear some gloves, because we are applying something that's acidic. Also, because of the overspray, put some safety glasses on, because you'll notice if you don't wear them, it's hitting you in the face, especially on a windy day. So right now it's not too windy, but again, this sprayer is not the greatest sprayer on the planet, and it's going to be more like a wet mist. So I want to make sure I don't get any in my eyes. Other than that, it should be easy peasy. So let's go. So I want to show you guys what we're dealing with. It's been over a week since we sprayed. So what you have is a lot of remnants down. Along the rails, it's a little bit thicker. Hopefully it breaks down. Basically, a lot of dry matter that just kind of fell off is sitting on the plastic. So I'm not really too worried about that. But the walls is what I'm concerned about. So we're going to spray the walls down. You'll start to see this activate really quickly. And I'm just going to coat the whole hopper, and then we'll spray it down real fast, and you'll see a difference. And you'll notice too, once I apply the chemical, how quickly this thing starts to work. You'll actually see it to run down the walls. So you can see it's starting to work itself down, and that side's done. Try to work from your top down, so at least the moisture actually spreads down this way. Even the clumps I could actually see breaking down right in front of me, so it's really doing a pretty good job right away reacting, especially as it's dry. Actually watching lime chunks actually coming off, so that's good. So this side's done. I'm going to go on the other side and knock it off, and then I'll show you after it sits on it, and I'll get that side done, and then we'll spray it down. So here's a view of the hopper after we wound up spraying one coat of CLR and washing it down, and I think you can see a big difference. I'm going to have to get inside because it's hard to reach to the floor, and I'm going to stand on the bars across the poly floor, so but I want to get low. I want to get as much of it sprayed off as I can, and I have some bulky stuff right on the edge I want to get that out. And it's a lot easier probably getting inside anyway, and I can hit everything. So I'll show you when we're done, and I'll tell you how many coats it takes. So after crawling inside, hitting it twice with CLR, and using a stubby gun, I wound up getting 99% of this cleaned out on the inside of the hopper. Looks 100% better. Just needs to dry. That's as good as it's going to get as far as I'm concerned. We're going to oil it up and then put it away for the winter. So I'm not too disappointed, and what little bit of residue that's on here is not going to do any damage whatsoever. So we're going to work on the spinners next, but here's the results of what happens with 2 coats of CLR and some serious pressure washing. And we spent about 2 hours doing this. So this was not just a simple, easy spray job. It was 2 hours spent getting it to this type of condition. So, and that's with a 4 gallon per hour, 4 gallon per minute pressure washer. So now we're going to be working on the spinners, and you know, we have a lot of residue that came out of the back end. We have some lime sitting on the wall, and we're going to just rinse this thing down real quick, get rid of all the loose stuff. Then we'll come back with the CLR, and we'll start working on the spinner aspects of things and getting this all cleaned up. So we'll be in good shape then. Here it is. Before we CLR, we're going to take a break, let it dry a little bit, come back out, and we'll put the CLR on and let it work and get this thing knocked out. Alright guys, so we're done with the spinners. We did best we could, and we got the back plates done. We got the back end finished. There may be some crumbs shooting through the back end as far as they got blown back into the hopper, but I'm not too worried about it. We got 99% of all the lime off the machine. This is a very brutal and very long process, and I'm not really too happy about how long it takes, but I'm very happy that we got the lime off, and the only thing I have to do now is let it dry, and then we're going to oil it. And I'm really not going to show that in this video. You guys, thanks for watching a video on how to clean a lime spreader. You know, this was a challenge, and I have to honestly say that if you really want to take care of your equipment, you're going to almost have to go through all this pain and suffering. And I call it pain and suffering because we spent hours and hours and hours cleaning this thing off. You know, you can't do it with a pressure washer by itself. I don't think to do a really super job. I think try that CLR lime removal for vehicles that did a pretty decent job. But again, you need a good pressure washer. If you have a 2.5 gallon per minute pressure washer, it's going to kind of be a challenge for you. My suggestion, get yourself a 4 gallon per minute pressure washer. I'm really happy with my purchase. I think that really made the big difference. My helper also agrees with that because it is really takes a lot of force and a lot of effort to do. You know, and you know, we also use the stubby, and that helped out a lot, especially getting close, especially up by the chain. And also I got inside the hopper at the end, and that did make a difference too. But again, if you have the poly floor like I do on a Redhawk series, I think you have to be kind of cautious of breaking the poly floor. So be careful as far as getting any kind of 0 type degree nozzle on it. You really want to say about 15 degrees or even less. You know, like maybe 20 degree, 25 degree. So you're not really putting too much damage and pressure to the poly floor because it is fragile. Once it breaks, you're kind of stuck. So other than that, I'm really glad that we did what we did. It worked out good, and I just want to show everybody some of the pain you're going to have to go through to do it. It's not a quick spray down job, and I don't care if you do it right away or you took you a little bit longer. I think once lime starts to pack into your machine, you're stuck. And just the one thing you need to do is if you are using it, don't leave it out in the rain and let water hit the line, because when it hardens, that's when you're going to be battling it out and you're going to have to clean it out a little bit better. Other than that, those are my suggestions. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you gained something from the video.